I don't, but trust me, I don't use it like that, man. I'm a humble person, bro.
Cool. Did you get her? Did you hit her, Bill? There we go. Yep. Awesome. Cool. So how's everything going, Mike?
I can't complain, man. I'm healthy, and during this time where a lot of people my age and from my crew not as the best of health, and you're finding your friends falling off, I can't complain because I'm definitely there. My health is definitely up. My mind is sharp, physically well, and I have all my senses, man. I'm able to see everything that's going on around here and stay out the way. Let's put it that way.
Good. Do you feel like
it's good?
Would you feel like 45 was the marker or 50 was the marker?
50 doesn't feel like 50 to me, man. I feel like
I thought it was 45. It's like when I hit 45, I was like, oh man, things are changing.
You know what? Okay. All right. In that sense, truthfully wise, I felt that it was 40 when I noticed things changing, 40, 45.
Yeah.
When you notice things changing. And the changes aren't unexpected. It's just, are you taking care of yourself, handling your business and staying on top of things, or are you just out here being loose and being dumb? Yeah. Then everything changes from the way you walk, talk, lay down, sit down, get up. All of that shit is relevant. But for me, 40 wasn't. It was changes, yes, because I realized that, oh shit, I lived more already than I'm going to live, than I'm expected to live, and that was a bigger part of it. Yeah, you had, because at that point you had to, you start realizing that the shit that you were passionate about, like, I'm going to do this, and next year I'm going to get this done, and in 5 years I'm going to knock this out. Your way of thinking starts to change.
So you've always been pretty physically fit, though. So you still hitting the gym, working out?
I never went to the gym. When I was doing physical, to stay physical fit for me was, one, the martial arts I was doing. I'm not doing it right to the second, but I still have my training things here to do that. So I do that. But I'm a welder by trade now, so I'm out always, with the steel, always physically, fabricating and doing all that shit with that. I'm into motocross, which, if you could ride motocross, you already know that's full body. That's a full body sport.
How long have you been doing that?
Motocross, I've done that all my life.
Really?
I've done that all my life, and it's only now that I'm not doing all these things to the extent, that of importance that they are or were to me, right?
Sure. So do you like motocross leisure, or is it something that you did like?
Not to be out. It was always leisure. Okay, leisure, it was always leisure. But I took it to the point where, when I had bought my house, I bought it strictly for the purpose of having my track in my yard. That was like one of my main things. When I buy my house, this is going to be there. I'm not buying it. And so that was how serious I was about it. Had the bulldozers, the tractors, the bobcats, all that shit, and I found good.
It's like a kid's dream.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was, man. And I built the shit myself, and I would change the whole track up next week if I wanted to do it, but I had the space and the energy and the drive to do that. So all of that is physical. Everything I do
for sure
was always physical, and I didn't have people there doing it with me. Right.
That helps keep your brain sharp at the same time too, brother.
So it is.
That's good. You can do that. And I think like you staying active like that keeps you young, bro. Kind of like you're talking about.
All of those things, man, all of that keeps you sharp. It doesn't hurt that I don't, I'm not into chasing down drugs and doing all that stupidness and shit that'll totally just make you seem retarded, even if you're not. I don't really, I was never heavy into doing that shit. I drink it here and there with the bros. I'll do that anytime. But anything else I was going to, jeopardize my longevity or jeopardize my health to where I'm now, a liability to everybody. I always thought about that shit, throughout my whole life. So the physical fitness was always at the sports, which was the martial arts and the riding, like I told you. Those things just keep you young, keep you fit, and never mind the drumming. You already know what's up with the drumming aspect of things.
Right.
If you're gonna do it and then take it to that level, you now put all those things together. And at one time in your life, let's say just prior to 40, I won't front now and say stupidness, but you're almost like a triathlete at that time, man. You can
right. So I think you probably think similar to me too. Like, I've hung out with people and drank and, had my good times and whatever else, but every time I do something like that, I'm thinking about the consequences of the next day and what I'm not going to be able to accomplish and what I'm going to miss out on. And especially when kids came into the picture, then it's like your kids don't give a shit what you did the night before,
right?
Or
right.
whatever and neither does your work, neither does your career, neither does for your instance, neither do your fans. They don't give a shit if you had a bad night before. They have an expectation of you the next day. So it's like for me, every time I go out and drink, it's like I got to weigh my consequences here, and being productive was always more important to me.
You always have priority. You always have to think like, what do you have to lose too? Like, if you go out and do the wrong things, like there's always something like there to lose, especially if you have. There's always consequences, especially if you have like stuff going for you. That's always something in the back of your mind to think about. So it's good you stay focused like that, man. And
have to.
And on a previous that you mentioned too, like. So like when you're out we're out on touring quite a bit. You probably seen the two camps that happen, which is the guys who drink and smoke to cope and the guys who don't drink and smoke to focus, and that's
the toughest part of it, man. That is, especially for us where you have to have 3, 4, 5 people in the band, it's still a business. It's still number one. It's a business that you're leaving your house for. You're not having a 9 to 5 at home because you're doing this. You're leaving your kids. You're doing all this shit. That's the toughest part of it, because for what we do, for the music lifestyle that you live, you always think that the drugs and the party and just be out there with your ass hanging out is the main way to be rock and roll and doing this and doing that. But it's not really. As a businessman, I consider myself a businessman. I'm not out here trying to lose money or have anybody involved with me losing money. It's about, if we're going to do this, let's go ahead and get this and come out on top every night, every night, every day. So that was always, that was a downside of it, for me, is you can't, me being myself and the other members who may have been similar to me, who weren't really heavy into the things, it definitely puts a separation. No matter if you're the band, there's definitely a separation when it comes to that, and anyone who, and these young kids coming up who think that it's just going to be, we got this, we got signed, or we were about to get on this 2-week, 3-week tour, and we're just going to go out there and rage and do this, do that, and the other. They're going to find out. They find out quick that problems come with that, because you're only as good as the weakest link, right? And
I think everyone's, you're right though. I think everyone's mentality, like, is when you get that opportunity, it's excitement, it's to cut loose. It's like, okay, we can not have a job, not realizing that it actually is a job, and it's and it's a difficult job, because, if anyone's been in a relationship, how difficult a one-on-one can be. And then you throw 5 guys in a van, and
different scenario at that point.
Right. And it doesn't matter if it's the van, Winnebago, or the full-size bus. It does not matter. The separation is still there. And at the end of the day, you really have to decide, is this a business you're doing? Are you out here to be serious? Take it seriously. You got eyes on you. You have people's ears. People are listening to everything you say, what you tell them, how you come up, how you step up, how you approach them, how you shake their hands, what they leave with when they leave you. Some of us want to be left with, oh shit, yeah, he's cool, he smokes the greatest weed, he drinks the most, this, that. Others want to be left with, I can't believe I met him first off, and he just told me the craziest, the most deep, heartfelt shit. And I really appreciate him and understand that, and this is what I'm going to try to do if I'm going to try to become that, and that was always most important for me. Being a minority in what it is we were doing, it was always important for me, for anybody to come to me if they had any stereotype of thought, for that to be knocked out of the box right away. I was always, more about, if I met you, I wanted to speak to you. I wanted you to be able to speak to me. If you came to me shaky and feeling, oh shit, this is Mike Smith, he's going to be this way, that way, the other, I'm the first person to immediately diffuse that. That immediately, to where they understand, holy shit, I can't believe this this is great. And I want to ask him these questions, and the answers you get are going to be heartfelt, deep, and something that you can leave with. And that's just, that's just me, bro.
Rise and grind, everyone. Wake up to the rich aroma and bold flavor of Grindcore Premium Coffee, the perfect way to kickstart your day. By musicians and dedicated to musicians, Grindcore carefully selects beans to deliver an unforgettable taste in every cup. Experience the difference in quality of supreme small batch coffee and savor a cup crafted just for you. Your morning routine deserves the best. Treat yourself to Grindcore coffee and elevate every sip. From the daily sipper left-hand path to the caffeine-drenched black magic, there is a roast for everyone. Grab yourself a bag or 2 or 3 at grindcorecoffeeco.com. And this is just like, I really don't ever think about this, but you did carry the torch for that. Being black in a predominantly white driven atmosphere, that you did such a spectacular job with it that I've personally never really thought about it in a sense like, oh, this band has, these guys in it and this whatever. And I think that's when you did it right, is when that race is, it's not even not an issue. It's just not even really. And I'm sure you ran into a lot of instances where people did bring it up, but it's like, for me, if you had to ask a question like, well, who's in this band? It's not the first thing or even remotely in the top 20 things that I would think about. It's more over, how fantastic you guys, and really how uniquely your puzzle pieces came together for what made Suffocation what it was. Right. And you think about the magic of the personalities it takes to make a system work in a band, right? And the chemistry that it takes, that something magical was really going on when you guys were young, really young.
Right. Yeah.
And as far as like the technicality of what you were doing, the complexity of things, and the uniqueness of what it was, try to walk me through. Did you realize that kind of shit was going on, or was it just a natural deal? Because like, even going back to your EP and everything else, it's not just 4 measures of this, 4 measures of this.
Right. Well, the color thing never was an issue, with us starting off. It never was. It never, because we living on Long Island, Long Island was so diverse. Anyone out there was just different. We all went to school together. We all came up together, and the prejudices between the cultures was never a thing. At least never a thing that I or my family accepted.
Sure, right.
Because you gotta. If, for those who don't know, who know now, that when Suffocation came up, they came up in my house. So it wasn't. It would have been my parents who would have been the first ones to be like, wait a minute, who are all these white people coming through here? Get them out, get them out, get them out, get them up, get them up, get them out. They would not. They never even thought that. I've never seen it in my life, so I'd never thought that my whole life. You know what I mean?
And that's the blessed way to be. I think that's the perfect pocket to be in. Is like,
that's good.
If you're coming in with character, that's the bottom line.
Yes.
Well, if you're raised with it, it helps. And I'll
100%.
say for right off the top that I was raised with it from my parents. So that would never have been a case. If we were ever going to see anything regarding the differences in the nationality, it would have been when we left the house and went on tour and we went to different countries. That's when we expected to see it in the beginning, right? In the very beginning, that's when we expected. If there's going to be any problems at all with this, it was going to be when we hit somewhere like Germany or such and such. And the answer to that is no, because what's good about what we do as musicians and our genres is that we're like a gang mentality. Anybody who does this, we've already come into agreement of certain things,
right?
This is what we like. This is what we love. We like it heavy. We want it raw. We want it original. We want to stage dive. We want to slap each other, pick each other up, get back up and go. That was the law in the beginning. Hopefully it's still the law now with the new generation. And it's just an agreement that we always had. So if we were in the same place, example, the same club, like Suffocation is showing up in Germany, and we're in that club, and everyone in that club, we already know from the door that this isn't a problem amongst us. You know, we're all family in here. So there had to have been a real rare breed in the club who would have started something like that. Rightfully so. When I first went out there, I thought naturally, oh shit, we're going to Germany. We're still on the cusp of hardcore, you know, hardcore, like it's like, for instance, you would say something like the Cro-Mags were out,
Sure.
and they had a vibe to them. They had a stigma to them, whether they were that or not. They had a stigma to them. So you would think, all right, there's still the hardcore out here. We're mixing the thrash, we're mixing a little death metal. We were all trying to figure out what our path was and where we were going to fit. Could we play shows together? Could we travel together? Could we do all these things? So naturally, my first thought of where I would have that trouble would have been, oh God, I'm going to Germany. It's going to be it's going to be the skinheads right. Who's going to do this, and it was never ever that, because from the beginning we always loved the music of each other's bands. So as soon as we seen each other, it was always appreciating, like, wow, is this real? Are they really going to do this? Are they really going to pull this off? And that's what worked in my favor, and I'm sure Terrence's favor as well, is because we were minorities. The question would have been, when we got on the stage, are they really going to pull this off? Let's see how this goes here. And that was always a strong point for us, because we were always better live than we were on tape. Right. So live shows was always, that's where we knew, if we're in this club here tonight, when we get on, it's about to happen, and we're going to bust this place up. And then we want to see what everyone's complaint is. And it was never that. It was never.
Awesome. So you guys all, I'm assuming not all of you went to high school together, or did you, like, in the same high school? Or?
Let's see. Me, Doug Cerrito, and Frank went to school together. And how Suffocation formed is because Frank eventually left our high school, and before high school was over, and split and went to the next town over. So when he went into that school, that's where he ran into the other half of Suffocation, which at that time was Josh and Terrence. So that's how that all merged. But we always hung after that merge. Before Suffocation, we were always hanging. We were in the streets drinking and doing whatever we're doing, and that's how we all came together. So half of the band went to elementary and high school together.
You guys started in high school then, pretty much? How old are you? 15, 16?
I was 17 when the demo came out. So we were messing around in 16, you know, right out of, like, doing stupid battle of the bands in the high school and shit like that. In different bands though, not the Suffocation lineup, but all of us were messing around with the instruments and the bands, and we knew we were going to do that early. So it was, for us, we were young. I was the youngest at 17, and then Efigy came out. I was 17 as well. So that's just what that was, man.
So I have a story that when Matt Jacobson from Relapse is from my hometown here. And I used to play, and I still play in the band, but used to be in a band called Suffer way back in the day, right? So we were rehearsing, and he came by to check us out, and this is super early 90. And he brings over a handful of tapes, and he hands your EP over. And, you know, you've heard the typicals at that point, right, with Deicide and Morbid Angel and whatever, and popped it in, and he's like, "You're just not going to believe this. These guys, they're like, there's something that is just going to change death metal forever." And I put it in, and it was just like, God, I couldn't even wrap my head around it. It was one of those things, you know, there's probably a small handful of death metal albums that came out in the 90s where it, you know, death metal's going one way, and as soon as that record hits, everything just goes and takes off a whole different direction, right? And your EP was absolutely one of those, to where wrapping your head around between like, you can tell when a drummer hits and when a drummer taps, and it just the phonics of it in recording. Between that and Frank, it was like, this is just like a demon in a box, is what it reminded me of. And it never changed, you know. It's so intense to have a band that is so technical and so in your face with every instrument, you know, that it didn't get old. And again, a lot of that is your writing style. I kind of referenced it a minute ago, but how did you, I mean, is it a natural thing that you guys kind of fell into with your writing style?
With us, the thing that what was different with us is that from the day one that we picked up the instruments and got together, it was never for the purpose of playing covers. We never went in the basement and touched a cover and said, yeah, we're jamming. It was never that. So we always listened to who we loved. And it was automatically known that because we love this, that, and the other, we're not doing that. It was still early enough to think that way. So when we went in the basement, it was automatically, yo, we've heard all that shit, but this is what we think is sick. This is how we feel on this. You know, maybe it's the air, the fresh air, Long Island, and the trees and all that shit that we had that we were very fortunate to have. And I'll tell you, I would never trade anything because I grew up in that. You can't bring me into the city and anywhere tight like that because I just feel like I'm going to die or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm used to the fresh air and shit. So we were fortunate because we were all original musicians. Everything we touched was like, yo, you heard this riff I wrote? Yeah, all right, let's see what we can do with it. And that's how Suffocation always was. And prior to Suffocation, when we were all in our spin-off bands with each other and figuring out who was actually in the town that played, who did things, every one of those bands was like that. You know what I mean? So we were always a greasier type of creation that was different than everything. And it was always like that, even in the kind of slamish type of bands that we did prior to that. It was just different. It really was. And we were fortunate, you know, because we were fortunate to be young at that time where we had space to do that. The industry didn't exist like it does now to where every band is a little bit of this band. It wasn't that.
Right. It was a magical time. It really was. Just like,
it was the best. Yeah.
You know, and I tell my friends this, you know, and other musicians that I, you know, end up rubbing up against how blessed we are to have grown up in that moment.
It was an epic time for sure.
You'll never duplicate it ever again, I don't think. And you know, the freedom that people had of expression and you know, you look at the top bands that were really busting through at that time and no one really sounded like anybody else.
That's right.
Like even you look at Florida and there's, you know, a dozen bands that bust out of Florida and maybe with the exception of one out of the bunch, they're everybody sounds so different.
That's right.
You know, and then same up in New York. It's like, yeah, everybody was different, you know, that it was magical. It was great.
And that was almost the unwritten law though at that time, you know.
Right.
If you heard a Pestilence, you didn't write like Pestilence. If you heard a Napalm Death, you didn't do it. Morbid Angel, same way. DSI, every one of them that came through with Destruction, no one came out and sounded like Destruction. That was what it was.
You can't do it.
No, you can't. It's not. And it was also the pride of it, you know, and we didn't know it was pride. It was just we thought that was the rule. If this band is doing this, you have to come out and do this. You don't mix and mingle in that way. So we were fortunate to be living at that time. Of course, that makes us old men now, I guess you would consider. But we were fortunate for the fact that we were forced into all being original, you know, branches on that tree, which gave us space to get signed and become big in our own right.
So how did you guys get signed? You got to remember that. That's got to be like a huge importance.
It's not that huge of importance because back then it was fanzines that were out. Tape trading and fanzines was the most important thing going on back then.
Yep.
And we had gotten our buzz through that first. And just the tape trading and stuff. And you think it would be like tip top of my head. It is not. It is not.
And it is now, like it's all weird too, because like I said, Matt is he's from Sioux Falls. Like it's in the middle of nowhere. You know, and for him to go on and start a label that did what it did, I mean, and the bands, that dude had an ear like to be able. Not it's too difficult to hear the Suffocation EP and be like, oh, that sucks. You know, like that's awesome and it's top notch. I'm grabbing it at all costs. But he had some great shit right off the rip.
Yeah, it He definitely was at the right place at the right time and had the air to grab onto everything. So when we got signed, it wasn't a difficulty at the time. Like for back then, you would think, "Oh my God, a record deal! Oh shit, I'll do anything in my life to do that." But and that's how we thought. Yes, that's how we thought. But what was more important was that our buzz of what we were doing was hit really hard.
Right.
And that was trading amongst all of us young kids like fire, like, oh shit, listen. So it was just natural that, and we weren't the first. There was DSI who was signed and Obituary who was signed and all these, other bands, but it was easier then because thank God the labels were on it. They didn't know how they were going to go about pushing it and making it what it's to be, but they knew better than to let it slip through their fingers. Let's put it that way, right?
Right.
So we got signed when we were supposed to be signed. I won't say it was easy because we still had to be in the basement first. We still had to do what we were doing first. Whether we got signed or not, we were still going to be Suffocation and we still were going to be writing that shit. So it just happened to be everything was in the right place, right time. Relapse was new, Air Rake and all of those were new. So this was a time where if you existed, it was natural that you were supposed to be part of this party, right? That's how it went then. So that's how that worked. It wasn't one special moment where, oh shit, we're going up to the table now. It was never that. It was never that. It just seemed to just merge into, okay, this just makes sense. Here we are, and let's go. And Matt, I thank him for that. He was always a solid person, and you were right. He had the ear for things, and at that time we all did. We're all right now. Any of us who were from back then has the best ear in metal still. We can understand the loudest, the craziest, the grimiest, the most cluttered. We can still depict everything that's going on in there.
It's kind of weird, even saying that, like how a lot of the guys who are still in the game, and there's still a lot of guys that are, 55 plus that are still ripping it. And how some of those guys, in my opinion, are still putting out the cream of the crop in the genre. Mm-hmm. Obviously they've got years, 30 years in the game or whatever, but for young kids to not be able to come and run them over, and they're still producing and still doing great. I think it's testament to exactly what you just said is you created it. Nobody knows it better than you.
It's the prototype. It's a prototype of what it is. And it still to this day, what was written in the late 80s and 90s it still hasn't been discovered by the world. We're still not on world platform as if other artists in different genres are, where they're out there making millions and selling out arenas and doing it. We're still playing small clubs and big festivals in order to all be seen in a big light. So we're not even discovered yet.
I have a question for you on that regard. Obviously, you were in the genre long enough to see the waves happen, right? So when you first started taking off, you start playing shows and it's a couple hundred people, and then you move into playing for a few thousand people, and then all of a sudden there's that dip in the mid 90s where you're back to playing for 100 people, and then I know you guys went through a split and then got back together at the time when things were kind of lifting again. What was going through your minds when you get back out on the road and all of a sudden the people aren't going to shows like they used to again? That has to be tough.
Well, the time where I saw the most people going to the show, now that's a tough one because in the beginning everybody was so hyped to do this, bands and the fans alike. So we all went to shows. If a show was out here on Friday, we were all going and we were going to knock that out, and that's that. But it was always small clubs. It was never, now we grew up listening to arena bands. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Every band we listened to, we learned of them from arenas. So you would think that that's the natural way it's going to go. It's not for our genre. It's not. So we all started in small clubs. So what do you consider big? Is 100 people big? 500 people big? I don't know if that's big or not. Now I think, let's say when we reunited, I think that was the best time that we saw for the crowd participation, the opportunities, to play bigger places, play bigger bands, play more countries, play this, that, and the other.
Bigger festivals, yeah.
I think that's when it was the most promising.
Right.
For sure.
And that's like when you can see the business potential of a hobby at that point. Like so many, when you tour, half the time you come back with less than what you leave with.
Facts.
Not even half, the majority of the time, so I think you were at that point, that precipice of careering music, and it's one thing I think a lot of people, especially younger generation doesn't get it, that most everybody has a job or they have to come home to something. And it's rare that you get that position to live off of music. It's just not that lucrative, but I think you guys were at that point.
Yes, we were.
And that's probably when it's the hardest, right? To get everybody to understand that taking it as a business requires a different mindset than taking it as a hobby.
Yep. That's when it was absolutely the hardest, because when we came back from the union, not prior to the reunion, not the first formula setting Suffocation, when we came back and did the reunion, that's when the promise of making it a business was the greatest. None of us were working when we started that again. We didn't have the 9 to 5 to come back to. We were circulating at a level that you could make it. But the first thing we spoke about in this interview was about how responsible we were. Were we partiers and just raging and do this? Or did you have your senses together and knew how to hold your money that you made until you could make it to the next tour, which was 2-3 months away?
Right.
When you mix that in a band, half of us are able to save and half of us are not. The band is a boiling point. It's always at a boiling point because you're ready to lay back. We just did 2 months. You're ready to lay back, hold your money, pay all your bills off, lay back. And if you are of wise thinking, man, you would be using that time to be writing new, getting your business together, get your merchandise, getting everything ready, up, figuring out how to move and interweave, do videos, do all your interview, do all that shit. Or you can take those 2-3 months and lay home and do nothing.
Right. You still got to work. You still got to work for it. It's a year-round deal.
It's so crazy, but it was so doable at that time, especially for us. Now, because you see how a Cannibal Corpse can do it. You see how Obituary could do it. You see how all of the bands we loved who are still doing it, they all were unison in the band. They all understood that they were doing this as a business and they had families to raise, so they couldn't mess around. If you have the split where half doesn't think that way, you're only going to be as strong as the weakest link, and everything's going to fall. Your money is now going to be compromised. My money is going to be compromised. Before you know it, the band just diffuses and messes up. So I think I would have to think that it's a lot harder to do today.
I would agree. I would agree. Just to cut through the static, that's where we're at with everything. Like, I play in multiple bands, and it's the same discussion I have with everyone from every label that I work with too, is like, how do you cut through the static? Because it is a sensory overload like we've never experienced in mankind, right? You've got so much information at the tip of your fingers that your attention span is 5 seconds long, and you just get blasted with everything. So I think it's incredibly hard for. It's
oversaturated too.
Yeah. Yes,
it's very oversaturated. Yeah, the scene itself, and with social media, it's made it even more saturated. Yes. So there's good and bad about social media, but now there's no barrier to entry really. So it's like to cut through the static, that's definitely a thing for sure. It's almost
impossible. So
it's almost impossible, and that is a fact. And the first thing you're going to do if you want to try and do that again, there's nothing more important than everybody in the band being on that same page. If you're not, it's not going to work. It is not going to work. It'll go for a good amount of time, 3 months, 4 months, a year, when everything is still fresh and new, like a new girlfriend. But as soon as you hit that one that one Rockin' the Road and realize that, oh shit, my bills are catching up before we could even schedule tours or nope.
And really, like now, because of selling copies is the hardest thing in the world to do, right? Mm-hmm. So labels now, it's only licensing. You don't get support, you don't get any. So anything you want to accomplish, you got to figure out how you're going to accomplish that on your own. And it's a struggle. And I commend everyone who's still out there, fighting that fight, because shows the passion. With this genre is so different than every other genre of music. The only thing I could maybe liken it to is maybe hip hop, in that realm of the underground is purely the pulse of that genre, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not in a lot of. It doesn't exist in pop rock. It doesn't exist in radio rock. It doesn't exist in rock and roll hardly anymore. If you go out to clubs, it's it's a lot of rap and hip hop music and metal and rock and death metal bands and stuff like that. That's where the underground exists. Mm-hmm. The other genres are just probably label created, I suppose, industry created.
Exactly what they come with the fan. They come with the fans before they're even signed. The labels already know what their audience is that they're going to push them to and the amount of money that they'll make. So that's already prepackaged in their deal. That's why they get signed today and they're a millionaire tomorrow. Now, it might be a borrowed million that you took, but the labels still know to give them that million so that they'll do their best work.
Right. I had to explain to my kids. They were like, "Oh, they know I play in bands and stuff," and then they're like, "Well, the bands I listen to," I'm like, "You don't listen to bands. The bands consist of members, and this is like one person and a bunch of computers. That's not a band."
You should tell them how you really feel.
Right? Hey. Sometimes you just got to teach your kids the hard things.
Oh man, that's classic.
And okay. I'm convinced that that's why the death metal could never reach the levels that the other genres did, for the one reason that, let's say we were still dealing with record labels, for the one reason that the record label can't design us. Right. They can't pull the band into the room and be like, now look here, I don't like the way you did that blast. I don't like the way you did that slam. Well, I want you to do something like. They can't tell us that because they don't know what it is and how it is we create what we do. Right. So they don't know how to promote us to their level of where their money is the most important. Now, if you do something like Motown had the band in the house and all the artists came through and their music was already made for them. You can't do that with us. And that's why they left us alone. They let us in enough to make noise, but they left us alone to the point of trying to push us to that next level, because
I think the one point where that did happen, and I think it was evident and clear, was Swan Song. And where there was a lot of involvement, and you can see how catastrophic that was. And I don't think they hide it. I think they're real adamant about how shitty that whole situation was and how it just ripped the soul right out of what they were doing. Yeah. And that, you can't really mess with what death metal is. I think it's that back to that chemistry shit again. Like it is purely a chemistry thing. You take Mike out of one unit and then slide another piece in, and it's not the same. It's not the same band.
Definitely.
No. And I wish, and we're doing that so much these days, where bands are just chopping people, bringing other people in. Before you know it, no one is even the original member of the band at all. And I wish that there was rules to this. I wish there was enough pride and gang mentality within death metal, because we have all right to be this way. We are so unique from everything else on earth. We have a right to be this way, where we're like, nope. This is the formula, the foundation that made this here. Mm-hmm. If we're not going to do this as this formula that made this and stamped our sound, then it's not being done.
It's something else.
Yes, then it's something else. You got to name it something else, move on, because now it's so bastardized that anybody at any time can be, for instance, Suffocation. And they don't have to live here. They don't have to be in a basement. They don't have to be nowhere. We can do this all through computer. And here we are. We'll meet up on stage and go and talk. And it's being done. But I feel that it watered down what it is we were trying to do in such a way that you don't care anymore. If 4 members of Cannibal Corpse left and they just made a new Cannibal Corpse tomorrow, I won't give a damn about Cannibal Corpse. You won't find me there watching them,
Right.
and that's just a pride thing that I wished that we would have kept.
Because
if we would have,
totally get it. Totally get it. And I also agree with you 1,000% too on the vibe and the feeling between writing and rehearsing in a room to writing, because I do both with different projects, and it's really hard to emotionally connect to something, and when you're not in that room where it's volume 110 in a 10 by 10 room, the energy and the
it's true. It's a whole different vibe.
The aura that it creates.
You can't capture it. Yeah.
I think it shines through. You can tell the bands that do it, I think.
Yeah, that's a fact. You definitely can. And that's the one thing that the newer generations, the kids, are as disconnected as they can be. This is the most disconnected form of human that the world has ever seen.
It is.
Anything anyone wants, whether you're 5 years old or 15, you can have it at the touch of a button. You don't have to go outside. You don't have to go knock on your neighbor's door, ask, can Jerry come out to play? You don't got to do nothing. Everything is right on your fingers. And that's the level of connection that they are. So it's a bad thing. It's a bad thing. Technology is a bad thing for what, it's not good for everything. And with this, what kept the death metal and the thrash and all that shit so greasy was that we were all brothers first. Mm-hmm. We all were face to face with each other, and we were busting out making noise wherever we were fortunate to be. And that gave us the roots. That helped us implant some type of root. Now everything is just at the touch of a button. You don't have any roots. You can bring it up and you can knock it out at the touch of a button, and it's a bad thing.
It is.
And we're not going to fix it.
People are socially awkward because of it too. People are more socially awkward than ever because of it.
100%. It's like anti-social media. It really is. People don't know how to be social anymore. They don't know how to communicate anymore. I tell back to my kids again, but I tell them all the time, like, just fucking call them. Mm-hmm. Don't text them. Don't message them. Don't snap them. Don't do whatever 40 other apps you got on your phone. Call them, because there's this disconnect, right? Where I can't even hear Mike's voice. So I don't give a shit what Mike has to say. Mm-hmm. It's just how we're texting back and forth. And I accidentally put a capital letter or leave a word out, and it sounds a whole nother way, and you're pissed off, and screw it, but it's just crazy. And I think it reverberates in so many ways to show attendance, to merch sales, to
people take it for granted too.
Yeah. Well, why would I go see that band? I just watched their show on YouTube.
Yeah.
That's it. Exactly it.
Here we are on YouTube.
One day.
We're here on YouTube, but even something like as simple as like a firm handshake, looking somebody in the eye, is seen to be lost in the mix nowadays, which I can tell a lot about somebody if they have a firm handshake and they look you in the eye. And that might be kind of old school of me to say, but that's how I was raised, That's really how I was raised.
Me too.
But and it's, even nightlife, like, not that I go to the bars or anything, but you used to go out on a Friday night and it'd be bumping, and now you go out and it's like,
it's not for us.
He says bumping.
It's not for us. It's not. No. And we can chalk it up to age. We don't have to be scared of that, being experienced enough and age to know that we don't need to be mixing and mingling with the up and comers, because they have their own memories and things they're trying to do to find themselves that we've already done. So we don't need to witness it. We don't need to be there for the backlash or the mess of it. We need to stay out the way. What we did was never broken. You understand? We could still live in just the music that existed in the 90s.
Right.
The second. And be fine with ourselves. If we separated it from what's out today, we would be fine.
I pretty much do that.
I pretty much.
It's like I'll listen to a bunch of different music, and then I end up coming back to my roots, and I'm like, I'm comfortable with this.
What's your comfort again?
What we did, what every band did from that time, is the prototype of what is today. Mm-hmm. So you don't ever need to. There's the prototype, and then now you have 75 to 80 bands that sound just like the pieces of that prototype. That's what was different when we came up. If you sounded like this, we weren't going to do that
right
in our band. That was the rule at the time. Now it's just the opposite. We're not going to even start a band unless everyone can play this type of riff, can do this type of drumming and gravity and blast beat, do this, that, and the other, and then we'll put the band together. So it's completely opposite of where we came from as to what it is now, which makes it easy because when I need to listen to my music, I'll go back to listen. Now today, I'm not listening to this music to define stages of my life like I did when we were coming up. The music we listened to, you went through certain stages of your life where you were listening to Deicide and this and that and the other, and you feel that and you know that and you know that's why you're the way you are. Now it's out and I hear it and I hear the good shit. I know what's good and what's not, but I'm able to let it play and pass on. One song next, pass on. If I go weeks without hearing anything, I'm fine with that too. And that's just the way that things have progressed to where it's so disposable now. There's so much that you don't need to hang on to anything.
Right.
The code you guys had back then was impressive, though. I didn't even know that type of code or that type of ethic existed, but that's so cool. I really wish it existed nowadays because there's too many bands that really sound the same. So the fact you guys had that was just fantastic, and I'm learning something new about this guy already. Seriously,
it was just unspoken. Yeah, it was just unspoken, you know.
And with the code saying that, with the code, it got broken down even more to where it was a code of, if you're from Florida, you sound this way, you do this type of thing. If you're from New York, you better come with this New York sound and feel and attitude. You understand? That was real shit there. That went on. You don't have that now. And especially not when you're mixing bands from across the country, across the world, and you're all meeting up on Google and doing what, that's not it.
Right.
Never going to be it.
So Mike quit Suffocation. Does he have the drive at that point to get into something else? Are you burned? Are you looking at like just taking a time out for a minute? Did you try to get into other bands? What was going on?
When I first got out of it, I was still physically just whatever to do that. And I had different circumstances. I had my other house. I had my studio in there. Everything was at fingers reach. So I had the drive. I never thought to do another band to the level of Suffocation. I guess I'm different from the rest of them, but I always felt that there was never going to be a better situation than if we just kept the formula together. We're all local to each other. We all live right here.
Still.
If we would have just stayed that way, we could have seen the moon and we could have brought everything to higher levels and really been living great. And to do that now and start off fresh with a new band, one, I don't have the time for it. Because I work full time. So I can't work 12 hours a day and then come home and then put in 4 hours, 5 hours, 8 hours in real heartfelt hours into somebody else's project. I just don't have the time to do it. So because of that, I have to work realistically. Not that I don't want to be in the band and see the fans and all that, but I'm a realist. So I'm not going to cut my nose off to try and play cute if I know I'm going to come in at 30% of my strength. I'll be garbage at that point. You know, I'll be garbage. So I've been approached. You know, I've been approached by you. I've been approached by a few others to do things, and it would be great because they're all super great projects. But again, I'll say it's because I know that when I'm in it at the level that I'm everything I'm in now, you would be getting 40, 45% Michael. And I know that's not fair to anybody.
Right. Well, I think, you know, it's really respectable that you're holding yourself to a standard of, you know that everything that has your name on it to this point is 100% of what you were, capable of doing at that time. And then to just do something just to do something.
Yeah.
And
it would be all through computer and it'd be all through all that shit we know isn't right. We'll do it. We can make it right because we still have the mentality of the experience. We're experienced people. We know why we're doing what we're doing. So it's not, we grew into this. We weren't born into this.
Sure.
All right.
So that said, you've done some other things, right? So you've done the Grim Reel stuff.
Yep.
Grim Reel is just me. I do that because I was always an MC. You know,
Sure.
I've always written lyrics for Suffocation and all of that. I've always done that, and I like hardcore hip hop beats.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if they're talking about drugs and this, that, and the other. That's not what I'm listening for. I like the beats and the boom bap of New York beats. So Grim Real is me, and if I want to put out a feel of something, I can easily go and make one of those beats like in minutes.
Sure.
You know?
So
and I would still be holding the death metal side of me to do that.
I don't think they fall that far from the same tree, to be honest. And that's why earlier when I mentioned, like, you know, this underground and that underground are obviously polar opposites in the world, but at the same time, they function very much the same way.
Yes,
right. So the allure is, I can see where a lot of metal kids get attracted to that same thing, because the feeling, that aggressive feeling, is still there, and like the intellect it takes to make that product function. So when did you start doing the Grim Real stuff?
I would say probably 90, 96. I wasn't in Suffocation when I did Grim Real, so at that time, that was like my first time out of Suffocation for some time. So I would have to say it was about 96, and at that time I was not concerned about pretty much intermingling the two, the death metal and the rap, and making that one. I was just liking to make beats. Right. So if I put out 18 tracks, it was 18 different tracks of different styles of what this could be. Now, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to come completely hard, because now I have everyone's attention from the metal again. Right. So if I'm going to do it, I want them to know this is how it would be if I was going to be an experienced death metal, you know, person who I am. This is how I would approach hip hop now. And like I said, I'm always a lyricist. So the only difference between doing the Grim Real with the hip hop shit and the death metal is the lyrics. I can't growl the hip hop, right? Mm-hmm. It's all I write. When I write because I mean shit. So I want everyone to understand what I'm saying, and that's the only difference, you know, between it. It gives me the opportunity to write and put out my lyrics and really have you grab it and understand what I'm doing. And I'm terrible with it right now, because I start a beat and I drop it halfway, and then I started it. So I have hundreds of stuff of Grim Real, but it'll never see the light of day, because it goes to the point of, if I'm going to put it out, I know I'm going to grab everybody's attention. And at that point, if I'm not ready to continue pushing to keep the project moving, don't do it. You know, don't do it, because they're going to ask you, they're going to pressure you, they're going to be like, yo, what's next? And I didn't mean all of that. I just wanted to put out a little taste and come back. So with me, I keep quiet. I'd rather keep quiet than start something that I'm not 100% ready to push.
Right.
And kind of on that too, Mike. So you did a collaboration a while back with Necro. I actually had Necro. I interviewed him a little while back. Super interesting guy. I actually had no idea until he talked to me about it that you did a collaboration with him. And of course, he's sort of like a underground legend, and he's collaborated with so many metal and death metal people. Like, I mean, what was that like? Because obviously you're very multi-talented with like death metal, rap, and stuff like that. So to me, the fit with Necro was just there, in my opinion, and I'm glad that happened. I mean, what was that like, bro?
I'm glad too. It was just a spur of the moment thing. You know, he had called me out the blue and asked, you know, to do some drumming for a rap. At first, I thought he was Colby because he knew of Grim Real. And if you know Necro, he's big into his you know, hip hop. He's not trying to hear. He don't need no help with his lyrics. He don't need nothing.
No, he's pretty damn good, bro. He's an interesting character too. But yeah, man, go ahead.
Yeah. So that was my first mistake. Oh, what, you need to do Grim Real and Necro? Nah, man. I need you to play drums and whatever and do this. So that's what it was, man. It was a quick 1 day thing. He had an idea where he just wanted me to come in there live drums and physically be able to. He wanted blast in the song. So it was physically, naturally, we're both New York. Naturally, he called me to do that, and we just knocked that out. You know, I don't hang with him on a regular. I don't know him like that, where I'm just calling him out the blue, saying what's happening. It was a collaboration thing that he wanted to, you know, to add to his catalog, and that's what we did. And just left it at that.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting too, man. Like, I was so taken by the fact that like you and Chad brought up that code that you guys had back in the day, and there is a slight age difference between Chad and I, but Chad and I happen to like a lot of the same music, although I go all ends of the metal spectrum. Like, are there any newer death metal bands that you listen to now, or are you just on the old school stuff?
I'm not saying I'm just on the old school. I listen to newer death metal, but I don't seek.
I see
the newer death metal. You understand? If I don't hear it, I'll be good. I know it's there. If I have my headphones in all day. So if you're on the radio or like a Sirius or Pandora or any of those platforms, if you're there, I'll come across you because I listen to all the death metal still. But I don't hoard it like I did when I was younger. I don't need to do that. I know what I know of death metal. Like I said, that's the prototype of what everything is. So that's where I stay. I'm still very happy there.
Yeah, so, dude, I don't blame you. And it's interesting because I mean, like in the era I'm in, again, I like all different ends of the spectrum, but I do believe that like the era of Relapse Records, I think it was better than it is now because like now there's almost too many bands out there and there's too many bands that sound the same. Whereas you guys had that code back then of basically staying in your lane. And it's interesting because now like I've seen even people say, hey, I don't want to start a band because it's just going to sound like somebody else. And honestly, I think in some ways that's really the right mindset to go because things are already massively oversaturated as it is. And like I said, man, I go back to that code you guys have. It really makes me respect it so much, man. And it was such a better way of doing things that I really feel like people should learn from like you and Chad's era. And I know that a lot of people would like give me shit for that, but I truly believe there was something there that was to learn for everybody else, I think.
I think now that death metal has such an actual history now, right? To where the first time now where we can look back and actually have newer guys that are coming in to where they may not even reference roots. Right? They might not even know where the whole thing got started or how it got started or where it got started, and and I know that's a fact because there's younger guys that I've talked to where, I'll mention they'll, do an interview or something and they'll say, what are your influences? And you name off some bands and they're just like, oh, I haven't even heard those bands. It's like, what are you talking about? How can you listen to death metal?
He slams his hand down. What are you talking about?
What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
How can you not listen? Like just the curiosity would kill me, right? So if I heard a new genre of something, like where did it start? Like, because generally speaking, if the genre still exists, whoever started it was probably pretty kick-ass.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and that band that you're speaking to, the new kids, are most likely playing the staple sound and approach that those bands we're talking about invented.
Right. That's exactly it.
And it's interesting, like, because Mike, like from your neck of the woods, bro, your neck of the woods pioneered a subgenre of death metal called slam. So like internal bleeding, pyrexia. Some even say that like, Suffocation has slam elements, but I think it was more of like internal bleeding and pyrexia and stuff like that. So I just wonder, like, what is it, brother, about your neck of the woods that makes that music scene so special? Because I'll be honest with you, man, it's a very influential place. And of course, just being like a metal history geek like myself, I'm fully aware of that. And I got so much respect for that part of the world, bro. So you guys are doing something right.
Yep. Well, I'll tell you what, man, where we are on the island back then was considered so remote and crazy. You like, we're out in Coram and further Long Island, New York, and you wouldn't get tours and stuff that came out here. We were like considered, what? We're not going all the way down there. We're not traveling all the way out there to see you, hear you, or do anything. So there was something different in the water and the air and everything else. And we all knew each other young. And the main part that was important with that is that we all approached the music the same way. We never started bands to practice playing Dio or Ozzy or Maiden or any of that. We always just started from scratch. This is what we felt. And the only reason that was special, that it turned out to be special now, is because we had space to do that then. You understand? There weren't bands out doing these things. So a simple riff could have still been brand new to the world then. Now it's not. Right. It's very much harder to be a standout now.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's the main reason we were able to do that. Besides never playing covers, always just approaching the shit. This is how I feel sick. I need this to feel sick, and this is what I'm going to do in order to do it.
It's so funny because that's exactly how we all grew up here. Is the first death metal band we got in here was in 1989. And
goes back that far, bro?
Yeah, man.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez,
so 1989, and we are in we're like the belt buckle of the heartland, right? So we're in the middle of nowhere. Nearest thing here, you've got 4.5 hours to Minneapolis, 3.5 hours, whatever, Omaha. So we are literally next to nothing. So your sonic influences can be there to a degree, but like your physical influences really aren't unless you travel a little bit. And that disconnect left to what you had mentioned, same with being isolated out on the island, is you have room to breathe and that freedom to learn. And when you mention it too, these conversations are awesome because it spurs thoughts in your head that you never really thought about. And in thinking, like, none of my early playing was ever playing covers. It was never even a question. That was not what we are getting together to do.
Exactly.
It was, we're here to start a band and we're going to write our own stuff and we're going to make our own mark and we're going to do it our way. And I don't know. Two things is I don't think enough young kids pick up instruments anymore. And those that do don't understand that mindset the way it was in the 90s.
Right. Well, now in their favor today, the kids and the musicians are out of sight. They're fabulous at what they do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You got 100 Ingves now. It's crazy. So they're great at what they do, but they got the short end of the stick because what they're doing was already done. And that's the simplest part of it. We come from the era that is the fruit of it all. You can fight it, you could deny it, you want to say what you want. But we're at the age where we knew metal before it was metal, where every stage from thrash to hardcore to death metal to all of the subgenres were forming. That's when it was forming.
Right.
And we were young in our teens during that. So we had the best of everything. And internet wasn't there. So we had the focus and being out in the streets and the touch and all of the elements that you needed to be authentic is what our generation has. We are sorry that the new generation doesn't have all those fruits. That's not our fault. They'll be quick to call us old men too because of that. But we still know better. We came from when everything was more honest.
Right.
More organic, straight from the roots, which brings us to where we are now. We know the actual reason why things turned the way they did was because of technology. That's it. The lack of touching and seeing people face to face and being in a room and having to actually physically get up, get in your car and go drive somewhere to go jam and work. That was the first part of you showing that you had the heart to even do it.
Right.
I
think that's two ways. I think not only with band members, but fans.
Yeah.
Like going to shows.
Shows.
How many shows did you go to in that era where you had no idea who the fuck was even on the bill? Right? Just to go to the show, because that's where your homies are going to be at. Yeah. That's where you're going to be in that scene, right? So going to shows, and I'm sure late 80s, early 90s for you is very much the same. As you go to a show and you're going to get two hardcore bands, you're going to get a punk band, you might get a metal band, you might get like this tornado of styles, right? And helping you find that position to where all of a sudden you hear something that hits that spark in you and you're like, oh, that's what I want to do, right? That's where I'm going. I'm going in that direction.
You had to adhere to the people aspect of the business too. Cause like now, like it's interesting, like you guys back then literally had to be like people focused too. Like when you go to shows, like interacting with the fans, talking to people face to face, you didn't have like the luxury of talking to people behind the screen. And honestly, I think those were better days, like even like the early 2000s metalcore stuff. That's what I would appreciate about shows, was going to the shows and the bands would talk to literally everybody in the friggin' place, and it was almost like that's how you would build connections, and you almost had to do it, because if the fans like you as people and they meet you as people, they're probably going to like the band even better, because Mike, you had mentioned something at the start of the show, like you didn't want people to be necessarily starstruck when they met you. You wanted them to see you as like a normal guy, breath of fresh air a little bit, if you will. So there's that authenticity that I think kind of left at a certain point that I wish was still there.
Here's something that I've asked a few guys this question because it's that hard thing to wrap your head around, but because you can't really know the scope of it, of the dent that you've made, right? So the impact that you've had on people. Do you think about that consciously, or is it just something you just don't? I mean, because it's that catch-22, right? You don't want to stroke your own ego, but at the same time, I mean, you're responsible for a huge growth in an industry, right? And and then when you start thinking about things in that scope, is you get the guys who say, "Hey, man," and I'm sure you've heard it 1,000 times, if it wasn't for you, blah blah blah, right? I would have never started a band. I would have never done this. I would have committed suicide. I would have,
facts.
So the butterfly effect that you have because of what you've done, I mean, does it?
It's important. Chad, I'll tell you, there's not a day that I go by where I don't hear something relevant to me being who I am from Suffocation. There's not a day that I can go in the streets or go anywhere to work or anything where the past of what I did doesn't come up. Now, and it's always good and positive because that's the way I portray myself. But with that said, from what I've done, one, I've spawned generations. I don't even know the number now of people who look just like me to do this now,
right?
Do metal. So that's very important. That's why I always needed them to know I don't do drugs first. I play and I have heart in this, and I need you all to have the heart in this too and represent what we're trying to do here. So that was one, and I do that to this day. But it goes even deeper than that because I'm a approachable person and have changed people's lives and might be the reason they do what they do. I've also been the one to help people get off the ledge who are literally going to off themselves.
Right.
You understand? I've gotten people out of suicide. I've spoken to people in their deathbeds where they were like, yo, you got me through the toughest time of my life. I can't believe this is crazy. If all I could do was speak to you and I've done that. I've done that a number of times.
Wow.
You know, understand? So it gets serious with me, and that's why it's important that I'm approachable the way I've always been, because now it's even more important. Now it's even more important because I'm settled down now. You can contact me quickly through means, but we're dealing in a world now that's real serious. A lot of things are going on. A lot of people have experiences where they need to know things. And I'm happy to say that I'm one of the most focused people anyone's going to come across. I really can go low and laugh, make everybody laugh. But at the same time, if you're in trouble or if you're thinking crazy or doing something off, I'll be able to help. I help with that. I definitely, at least my people who follow where we come from, I've helped a lot of people that way. My opinion on how I see the music moving or how they should be doing it if they're in a band, that comes up to me a lot. A lot of young bands call and contact me and ask me what's my opinion on this, that, and the other. And I help them by sending them back to the roots of where we all came from.
Right.
This is important that they understand there's a blood root factor to how we started, which made us so relevant. And if you can just hold on to a little bit of that and move that forward in the new, you will continue and you'll be so much more well received if you approach things like that. So this has been a lifelong dream for me. I can tell these kids that I've seen dreams come true. I've had a couple of my own come true. And this was one of them. And I'd be damned if I'm going to be on the microphone, have all these ears listening, and I'm coming out here talking garbage. I can't do it.
Right.
Can't do it. It was too important to me. So I'm grateful for this, man, because it's just what it is, man.
Right.
I'm a therapist as well.
That's cool, bro.
Well, it would be, it'd be easy and it always is. It's always easy to be negative. Right.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I mean, you could easily look at your situation as in, I'm not doing this anymore. But instead, it's like, you could never do anything musically again for the rest of your life and still hold the impact that very few will ever hold. So to be able to decipher the difference between ego and you know, I don't even know what the appropriate
Humbleness.
term. Yeah,
Being
but
humble.
you can be humble and still be proud of your accomplishments and share those the benefits of that, right? So knowing that, yeah, I have affected people's lives, and I'm going to continue to do so, and inspire people, you know, in whatever your reasoning may be, that you're struggling with something, knowing that, hey, nothing's easy, man, but you can lean on these people who, you know, have the experience and the history, you know. Is I think we've all met those guys where you have your hopes up, you meet this guy, you know, he's an idol, and you meet him and you're just like, fuck, I wish I never would have met that guy, because it completely just pissed out that fire, you know. And how that also has that same butterfly effect, you know, like, well, I don't want to be involved in this industry because these people are dickheads, you know. To where, you know, there's a number of those, but you know, I'd say the vast majority of like the old school dudes that I've become friends with are stellar people, because they fought that battle, they rode those waves, you know. And I think
it's really important, man.
Yeah, to know, like,
I can't stress it enough, man. I can't stress it enough, because it's so easy, especially in the technology where everything's a fingertip warriors and all. It's so easy to be a musician. Yes, you've done all of this, but the whole internet is on there slanging your name. Saying you're an idiot, you're this, that. I've gone 30 years doing this, and that's not what
anybody can say anything they want. Unfortunately, nowadays, you know, anybody a keyboard warrior is that, you know, you don't need any special credentials or press passes to be an asshole. You know, you don't need that part.
So with that said, you can have that one person that's going to come out on Facebook or whatever and try and do that using my name, and I can rest at night because I know I have millions of others who know he's lying.
Right.
Yeah, that's it.
You know, it's just that simple. When I met Michael Smith, he was this way. I know you're lying, saying that he did that. Right. And I have more people who will say that than the other. And that's how I can sleep at night. And I mean that literally, because I take this all personally. I take my career personally. I take the Suffocation name. I don't care how many members are in Suffocation from now till I die. I know that Suffocation started in my basement. And that's how I'm going to hold it.
Right.
You understand? I didn't give you anything.
100%. It's your baby. It's your little cut of your soul. You know, it's for sure.
Yeah. And I'm so happy that I'm able to use that to do, like, outside of metal, help people, because I have the experience of the world travel. So when I'm now at my 9 to 5, these people that I'm working with haven't been anywhere I've been, but they're going through real life shit, and I'm able to decipher that and break it down to another level, and usually help people out through that. And I'm getting better at it as I go. And that's the best part of it.
Now, Mike, how do you talk somebody off the ledge when they are in that predicament of a situation where they don't see any point or purpose to live, or they don't feel like they have any worth in life, or whatever it may be, man? Like I kind of like you get into that, man, because, you know, you're a down to earth guy, you're relatable to people. You know, when people have problems, you can sense it. But, like, how do you, like, talk them off that ledge to, like?
Yeah, well, first thing is being conscious enough to know that any one of us are always that far from the ledge. It can be one incident that puts any one of us on that. So it's how I would approach it is I'm always thinking of the yin and the yang of every situation. Everything could be terrible, and I don't like a lot of things going in my life as well. And it's harder for me to find someone to be the therapist for me. But I do know it, and it's not everybody's gift. It's not everybody's ability to care, to hear, listen when people are talking to you before you speak and just blurt shit out your mouth. That's the biggest problem, is that we're not listening to each other, right? So getting someone off the ledge is first knowing what the ledge is, how close it is, and how vulnerable you are where you can be on it as well. I always look at it from that and try and understand how quickly the bad points can get somebody to just fall into more and more depth. You know, it's very easy to do this shit. And with me, it's fortunate because when they come to me first, they came to me on the wavelength that, oh shit, this is Mike Smith, this is rah, 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 rah. So once that ice is broken and they realize, okay, I'm not crazy. We're on level ground here, and somebody of stature, I say that humbly, is actually willing to listen to me. He has experiences. He knows how to put a sentence together straight and talk, listen, and tell me why this could be this way or why this could be that way. I find pleasure in that. Everyone can do it. Everyone is not meant to be a therapist or a shoulder to ride on. But I know the damage of being about yourself, being selfish. I know what that is. I've lost everything I've lost that I loved in my life was from dealing with people who were selfish, right? So it's the one who isn't selfish who actually gets hurt the worst. So we're able to help others who are hurt as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
It just works for me, man. The biggest thing is being able to listen. If you're not listening when people are talking to you, you're a sucker to begin with. You know what I mean? Because you're a good person in the room. You have a heart. You understand things, and you're willing to listen. But then you talk to them, and they just blabber out and rah, rah. You know what I mean? And we come across these people every day, but they use you to save their life. You listen, but they don't. So that's really something that's important. Is that one, I was obtainable. You were able to contact me, and two, I was actually willing to listen to what you were saying. And I'm able to find the yin and yang of any situation. And before you know it, we can move to something better. You know, if you didn't get it from anybody else, you would have heard from me that this is the better way to go about this situation. And if it's life-threatening, that's different. Life-threatening stuff where they're on the bed is different, but they come to me differently as well, because they come to me saying that, yo, you brought me up through my worst time. I was listening to you, or I was listening to you and my kids are now listening to you, and you were so influential. Can you just please show me? That's where I totally shine. And I'm like, yeah, this is great, man. Right. All I have to do is
that's legacy, you know, and now you got a point where you're moving to a second generation of listeners and fans. And that's, I don't know. I think when we were all, 16, 18 years old doing this, I don't think we ever thought that would be the case, this stuff is going to have this long lasting impression, and we're going to be
yeah. And you're right with that, to that level. But like we said in the beginning, I was always one who knew that I was blessed to be where I was, and to be a minority, and to have all these people who don't look like me running to me because they want to know how it is I do what I do and when I do it. That, when you have people's ears like that, you don't waste that. From a business point of view, you don't waste that. You send them off so that they are uplifted and can now spread that good shit to 5 other people. You understand? That changes an asshole's character when they meet with people.
I've never heard that before.
Write it down.
Do you mind if I use that one time, Mike?
Making a shirt.
Do you mind if I use that one time, bro? Because that's
it's yours, bro.
But man, I expect to hear that tonight. That's good stuff. Yeah.
So in on topic of leaving a mark. So how, getting into the Long Island Hall of Fame, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So walk me through that. Is it a big deal to you? Obviously, you're proud of where you're from.
Yeah.
Is it at the same time kind of a bit awkward? Like you run in a fringe industry that is kind of the enjoyable part of it is that people are shocked by it, right? And that seems like you got to be the one of a kind to have done that
on Long Island. Yes.
So how did that come about? They just contacted you and said, "Hey,
yes,
you're more famous than what we thought."
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That is pretty. It's funny how, when that came about, because that was at the exact time that the band was at its worst with each other, and that's when I was getting booted out for the second time.
Okay.
So it was like literally on the days we had to go to the Hall of Fame to go receive our rewards, and I was out the day before.
Oh man, was that pretty uncomfortable?
That time
it was nasty.
It
was nasty work, nasty business, and that's what happens when you're dealing with that type of people. All right, I've just got to leave that there, because it was people that were in the band, it was people that were outside of the band that allowed any of all of that to become what that is, and half of them ain't even here no more. So there's that. But we had to take, like I said, Long Island and where we were from out east was very remote.
Right.
You do something out here, you're going to get known for being that person out here. Like we had Bismarck from out here, went to the same high school I went to. He's one of the pioneers of hip hop.
Right.
He's right here for 15 minutes from me. We had Salt and Pepper out here. You had Twisted Sister out here. You had a bunch of things going on that is just Billy Joel. You got
a little bit of Wu-Tang out there, don't you?
Yeah, I think so.
They're from yeah, from like Hempstead or Amityville, somewhere out there, somewhere on the further out. But it was important. It was important that one, they recognized it. That we didn't ask them to recognize us.
Right.
It was just you couldn't avoid us.
That's the best part, ain't it? You're like the train wreck that no one can stop. You're just like, too bad.
It would have been completely wrong for them to avoid us. So
that's awesome.
It was a great time. I never expected to be in any Hall of Fame anywhere, but that's just the gift of what this was.
So things are. You go to a ceremony, right? Is that how that all worked out? You get
yeah. I was always curious how that.
And
worked
then you
out.
guys are all probably not on handshake and hug terms at this point.
No, we certainly were not. We were at the worst at that moment.
So was it just?
And it didn't have to be that way.
Was it just quiet?
So stupid.
Between you guys,
it was awkward.
Yeah,
it was awkward. I'm not bringing any. I'm not going to point any one person. No names. But it was awkward because the way the people did it purposely put a wedge in between us.
Wow.
And they weren't even from it was just disgusting. Yeah. But we got through it. We made it through. And we had, past and present members come through. And what bothers me the most about the Hall of Fame thing is this. Being the original Suffocation and why we were, all of us who were original ones, is the reason we are there. If you go into the Hall of Fame now, you're going to see the album and you're going to see Suffocation. It's going to be an album that doesn't even have me on it. It's going to be another drummer or somebody else. So there's that. And then there's, all right, now I'm going to go in here and find somebody who didn't do any of this.
Yeah.
That's the nastiness of when you're swapping musicians and doing all this and doing all that and don't have respect of anything. You're not following the roots of things. Stupid little things like that happen, which you just got to grin and bear and be like, oh.
That's probably a lot of the committee at the time that's there who doesn't really know the history, enough to sort out the
that's sucks. True too. That's true. But the band knew it.
Yeah.
And so did the manager. They
Right.
definitely knew it.
Yeah.
And
so that shows what the mentality was at that time. Where they're like, forget it. We're just going to put on rah-rah. And we just got off of all our major touring that the world has ever seen of Suffocation. They just seen us on the History Channel. They seen me on the MTV Headbangers Ball twice.
Yeah, I was going to say the History Channel.
How did you get on? How did that happen?
Man?
I still watch that. I'm not even gonna lie. I go back and I watch that probably
History
at least
talks about
once maybe every 6 months or so. I'll have to go back and watch that because it's just the craziest shit in the world. I remember the first time I seen it, I was like, "What the hell is going on?"
Oh shit!
I didn't even know History Channel would cover any such thing like that. That's the craziest thing.
Neither did we. Neither did we, but this is what was so important about what we were doing when we came back from for the reuniting version of us. That was the heaviest Suffocation ever worked, hustled in our career.
Right.
We were everywhere. We played everywhere, every country, everywhere, a bunch of times, and that was the first real touring that Suffocation saw. So that's where we had all those opportunities from, right? All of that led to us getting to the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine doing all that and then going there, and then when they finally put the picture and the plaque up, those who did it aren't in it's just retarded. It was retarded business. But History Channel.
How did it happen?
They just called out of the blue. They called me out of the blue. The the director or the producer of the History Channel, and they were doing a series called The Dark Ages.
Yeah.
And they were like, we need somebody who can represent the Visigoth warriors. And I don't know why they would come to us. I guess because we didn't have anything like black metal out here or any of that Swedish type of metal out here. So you just naturally went to the heaviest of what was, and they figured it was us. So they called me out the blue. I could have been drunk or high and missed the phone call. Those are things that happen when you're not living properly. But I wasn't. I was on our business, and I got that call. I answered a random call, and it was this History Channel saying, yeah, we need. Are you interested in doing something like this? It's a little different, but are you interested? And I said, of course we are. Now, so we went and did that. Took all data, recorded and videotape it, normal what a video shoot would be. And we did it and we knocked it out. And what was more important in my mind frame when we agreed to that was, sure, it's sick for us to do that, but this is opening the doors for death metal.
100%.
To do this.
I put it right up there with like Cannibal on the Ace Ventura.
Ace Ventura.
Like you get that and you can't erase that now.
It opens the door.
And how many new eyeballs and ears are you going to get? You know, no matter how, because I know they thought the same thing, like, well, this is just going to make us look like idiots and it's going to backfire and whatever. And it's like, you know what? It's that adage, like no press is bad press, right? But if you're getting out there and you're doing what you do and you're damn good at what you do, it really shouldn't be a fail. And I mean, I can't even imagine how many people were turned on, you know, just from that, second, just from hearing 15 seconds and being like,
the different audiences.
What is that?
Yeah. And like the different audiences that you've picked into at that point too, like it's crazy. And like you said, that stuff never goes away on the History Channel, on the cartoons like that. Yeah. That just,
and it's residual. Right.
Yeah, it is residual.
I mean, I don't even know how many views that
I couldn't.
Bill, look that up on YouTube and see what.
But but at that time though, I can't stress enough the point of the opportunities like that. We were doing them. It wasn't for us. It was a chance for us to take all of us,
right?
Your band, all of us, to the next level of what we're supposed to be doing. That was the way we tried to run this. And when it fell off, it was only because we had weak links that didn't want to cooperate. And you're only as strong as the weakest link. Now remember, the young kids wouldn't remember, there was MTV still out there, Headbangers Ball was still going, and we were on that twice. You know, the second time I was on it by myself. So it's like we were doing these things for real. These are big things for death metal, you know, and you don't see that now. Nothing like that is happening really now. Right. The biggest things we're getting done is you're playing big festivals.
Right. Did you see the views on that, Bill?
108,000 views.
Of what? The History Channel?
Yeah, the History Channel.
Yeah, I didn't even know where you would find it.
Yeah, I was going to say that was like straight off YouTube. Now, Mike, kind of to piggyback off something here real quick, brother. So without mentioning names, obviously, the Suffocation ended on a sour note. So in that regard, like despite that, you have a heart for people. You still really care about people because you listen to people, you help people. I mean, what exactly made you stay that way after such a shit ending, so to speak?
It's my natural way. Okay, that's the easiest. It's the easiest question. I know that if I was to match the energy of the bad that I've come across, that everybody's going to die.
He says everybody's going to die.
It's the truth. It is the truth.
Well, at least he's honest, you know.
You know, I think it's that line, right? Like you go through and, like I said, it's easy to be negative.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If you can fight and say, you know, as shitty as any situation is, there was a lot of positive that got you to that position, right? And you just have that kind of personality to be like, okay, well, not everything goes in your favor, right? But look at all the shit that you got that nobody else got. You know how blessed you are that you were able to.
There was a lot of good
experience
that came from
all
it.
that shit.
Yeah, a lot of good that came.
So with that, then are you like not in communication with anybody?
No, I am. I see Frank more than anybody. He lives. I could walk to his house from here. I see Frank. I run into Doug Cerrito every
What's
now and then.
What's he up to?
He's just living his life. He runs his own business, you know, and he's just that's it. You know, he's more out of sight than any of us. Yeah. Like he'll pop up places, but he's never. He's been
definitely
off.
Yeah, I talk to Frank quite often. So, but just
he doesn't care about social media presence and all of that shit like that. He didn't do that. Terrence is doing his thing, and that's I don't really mess with Terrence. Not that if I saw him, we would fist fight. I wouldn't do that, but I don't call him to to do that. He's on a different level than me. And then there's Chris Richards. He's local enough. He's a Long Islander still, but he's jet setting. He's doing so well. He runs a number of businesses, and he's just jet setting, flying over your heads. He's what it is. And Josh is out in Australia, so he's been out of sight.
Sure, it is interesting watching. I mean, even beyond the Suffo guys or whatever, as you get older, and the branches kind of spread a little bit farther, what everybody ends up doing. I know that's like a huge part of, coming from an outside like myself, saying like, everybody knows, and that's the whole point of doing what the Growl does, right? So everybody knows the Mike that sits behind the drum set with, dreads down to his ass, like the tornado, right?
Good old dude.
Who's Mike? What does he do? Like I think about that shit all the time with people. It's like, like you see the maniac behind the drum set, and then he goes home, and what does that guy do? So that's kind of the cool part about what we're trying to do here is just so people can get a feel for the personality behind the person, and we're incredibly grateful to have you on the show, man, and take the 100%. Time to share who Mike is. It's for the world to know, and they should know that there's good souls out there. So
definitely, man, definitely. We could be we could be totally on the other side. There's two sides, good and evil. We could be totally on the other side, but the problem I always had with even portraying that is, one, I didn't. My family was never that. They never was like that. But if you're on the other side and you have problems in your life and things are hard and you come across some ragged, crazy ass shit, you have to expect that, because that's what you were promoting anyway. I've never heard any. Let me leave that there. Let me leave that there, because I know that if I am hurt or something terrible happened, I'm always going to look up first. I'm never going dark down and saying, "Hail, thank this, hail, thank that, hail, thank that." If I'm wondering why I'm in any pain or suffering, that's the first way I would see it. I have to be on the right side of things first, the honest side of things, the clean side of things, the open, optimistic side of things with myself and people, to hope that my steps take me to more people like that.
Right.
And we always wind up in the right place.
That's a good mindset.
I've had this discussion with my kids multiple times, right? So when the topic of faith or the topic of any of that comes up, and I break it down to very, very simple terms, much like what you did, is like, if I go through my life and I'm basically just trying to be the best person I can be to those around me, like everything that reverberates off of me, if I'm not trying to make your day anything but better, right, then I should have nothing to worry about, no matter how that shakes out. So if I die and there's nothing, then my legacy is the heaven or the hell that I decide to leave behind, right? So if I'm a bad person, no one's going to remember me. No one's going to give two shits. And if I leave something behind to where, I can pass it to my children, I can pass positive, direction to those around me or to my children, then, as long as you're just being the best that you can be, sharing that.
It's really all about, the example that you set to Mike. And, I think, Mike, you're a very good example of somebody that made it big in life, in a sense, doesn't owe anybody anything, but yet you give back so much to people just in the way of caring. And I feel like,
if they're open enough to even accept it, I'm not going to force it on anybody, because you get burnt when you try to do that. You wind up getting hurt the worst when you try and push and open people up. It's best you keep quiet. And when they come to you, they realize, oh, shit, this was a gift. I'm going to keep this.
Well, that's when it's most real too.
Yeah, it is when it's most real. And I also that's how you mentioned, like, doing like as much listening as talking too, like that, like a lot of people's problems like just need to be talked out. And oftentimes if they have somebody to like toss it out to, they can figure it out without you even saying much. They can say, oh, I just said that, so maybe I realized something different.
Facts. It's the worst. I think now it's like nothing turns me off more than that. It don't matter if I'm talking to friends, coworkers, or a spouse or whatever. When you know that you're telling somebody something that's important to you and you can see their eyes glaze over And as you're talking, you can see they're already thinking here,
Yeah.
there, or is just so eager to just jump in on top of you and flip it to them now. Yeah, this is my situation. That's where it's no good, man. People need to get past that, because you don't know who was sitting next to you. You could have been sitting next to somebody who could have saved your life. Saved your life, but because you were so ignorant, that wise person already knew your ignorance.
Or just even something simple as like that person could have just taught your ass something if you just would have listened.
Crazy.
For sure.
Yeah.
And that's it, man. That's the way I've found that I've always been blessed with my steps. Even when I think that, this is crazy, man. I need this. I need to have security. I need this, that, and the other. I always knew there's directions you can go. Always take the right decision and direction with everything you're doing. Even if the other people just got mad that you just said, nah, I ain't going to the park today. I'm going over here to take this walk. Even if they get mad, it doesn't matter. Every time you make the right decision in the decisions you have to make, it's going to lead you somewhere. And eventually you're going to get led to people who are similar minded. Right? And then when you meet them, it blows up into a nucleus and you're now just humming, especially if you're in a business frame mind.
A lot of what you're saying too is very relative in the business sense too. So I can tell that you're a good businessman, because business and this music stuff that we do is all really just one big people business. And so I can tell you get a very business mind, because you see the people aspect of it. And that's what so many people miss now. So props to that, bro. Seriously.
Well, thank you, man. And I'll tell you what, it's the hardest thing to find, especially in a band. It's the hardest thing to find 5 people who would like that.
Yeah,
if you can find 5 entrepreneurs to really hustle, any one of these bands could be here for 50 years. If you have 5 people like that, 50 years you could be here, because you'll all be feeding each other.
It's just so crazy though, because nobody has like original members anymore. And I think that like we talked about it. I think there's only one band in any subgenre of metal I can think of that has the same band members, and it's Seven Dust. And even like the one guy left for a little while and then came back, but that's really the only band I can think of that's had like all the same members since day one. It's almost like it's a rarity. You don't see it anymore.
Incredible. That's incredible for that to be like that, man. And I wish we could have it. If we could have done that shit, man, and just never broke the formula, oh my God, what we would have been doing right now would have been out of this world, man.
Yeah.
You'd be talking to us from a mansion, basically.
Yeah, I definitely would. I'd have invited you, flown you all in.
Sweet, bro. Sweet. You'll still have to do that one of these times, man. Right?
I hope to. I hope to be able to do that.
Awesome. Well, I think, again, I think we've covered a lot of really great topics.
Yeah, it's been an honor, man. Thank you. Yeah.
And, very honored to have you on here. And I can't thank you enough for taking the time to sit down and BS with us for a while.
Yeah, this is good stuff, man. I know it would be on point, especially with talking to you in the past, Chad, and knowing what your projects and what you're on, and watching it develop. And you say you're going to do this, and then the next thing you know, Empty Thrones is right there. It's like, okay, yeah, he wasn't playing what he said.
No, I appreciate that.
He asked me to do this like not even, I don't think 3 weeks ago, and we're already doing this. So yeah, man, when he wants to do something,
it's like one of the first.
I know that, and I know that from you.
Said to him like, okay, we're going to do it, but if I do anything, I don't fuck around. If I say I'm going to do something, I just want to do it. I want to do it right, and so I greatly appreciate it. That means the world to me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep. Before laying eyes on you, I knew it. Well, thank you guys, man. I know you're going to have success with this, because it's just it's quality. And to all of you listening out there, if you do everything from the roots, man, get like-minded people in your circle and step with it with intent to succeed, you will. If you're going to try and sidetrack and do all that other garbage just to be cool or trendy, you're going to have problems. It's going to take you 5-10 times longer. So this is what we do, man. We work from the roots and we come from the heart. We got energy in what we do. And when people ask us why we did it, we can come from the soul and tell them because we bled for it. And that's what it is. Bleed.
Thanks for checking out this episode of the Growl podcast. If you enjoy all things metal, please help yourself out and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions or comments for any of our guests or myself, please feel free to leave them below, and we will try to address each and every one of them. Like these videos, share these videos, and help spread the word of the Growl.